You know what? I bet when you sit down with somebody over a real long meal and you're getting to know them and you swap all the stories about your life and you go through the whole thing and they go through theirs, I bet every one of you has got a couple of calls to adventure that you skipped, that you resisted, and that you regret skipping. I also bet many of you have some calls to adventure that you are glad you did not pursue. I also bet that for most of us, when we think about the story of our lives, the big turn of events, the big moments that changed everything, all have to do with us either responding to a call to adventure or resisting a call to adventure. That is, sticking with the status quo and staying with what's comfortable and safe and that we know, which sometimes is a good call, versus going and seizing an opportunity or following through on an invitation that takes you to new and unexplored places. Likewise, Queen Esther finds herself in that position here in Esther chapter 4. Mordecai the Jew wouldn't bend the knee to Haman, who is descended from the age-old enemies of the Jews. And Haman, when he finds out, isn't satisfied to just kill one Jew, the offending Jew. He wants to kill them all. So he uses his capital that he has saved up with the king to get the king to issue an ill-advised edict to say, we're going to have all of the Persian citizenry turn on another part of the Persian citizenry and kill all of them on one pre-appointed date. Mordecai goes into mourning. The Jews go into mourning. Susa goes into bewilderment. And eventually, Queen Esther, who is within the walls of the seat of power from which the edict was issued, she finds out she didn't know. And when some of her maids come and whisper to her what's going on, she doesn't understand why Mordecai would be upset. And so she offers him clothes. It's like, here, you just need better clothes or something? And Mordecai's like, no, it's a bigger deal than that. And ultimately, the situation gets escalated to a more assertive intermediary, a eunuch from the court of the king. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the original audience would have done with the fact that this is a eunuch serving as the go-between. But this fellow, Hathach, relays messages back and forth. And Mordecai's like, here's exactly what happened. Here's the exact amount of money that Haman offered Xerxes to do this evil thing. And Mordecai's like, hey, eunuch, you got to go back and explain to Queen Esther exactly what is going on. And further, you have to, quote, urge her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Well, there's your call to adventure. And what we see is, like most of us, when presented with a dangerous call to adventure, she at first balks. Esther 4, verse 9. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. The only exception to this is for the king to extend the gold scepter to him and spare his life. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. So effectively, the message she sends back is, whoa, that's a really big problem, but there's really nothing I can do about it, even though I'm obviously very sympathetic. Well, what are we as readers to make of this? I suppose interpreters from a certain point of view and from a certain era might look at that and be like, well, that's just a girl looking out for herself. She's doing the right thing. I mean, nobody knows she's Jewish. It's not like she's going to get swept up in this thing. This is her behaving shrewdly and doing self-preservation. That's how some people would see it. Is that what's going on here? Maybe. We'll talk more about it. Other people would look at it and say that she is actually in a very helpless situation and that she genuinely believes she can't do anything about it, even though she is clearly very upset by what is going on. And she wants the situation to be resolved. She just fears that if she's the one who goes and does the resolving, the whole thing's going to fail and she's going to get executed before the rest of the Jews do anyway. So she's not the right one to help. She's empathetic to the problem, obviously. But Mordecai, you got the wrong girl. I can't help you. Still, others might look at this and say, this is just an oddly framed way to the modern audience of asking for advice. Saying, well, obviously I need to do something about this, but these are the problems I have. Go bounce it back to Mordecai to see if there might be any solutions. And I suppose if we just read up to that verse, the call to adventure, or the balking at, or short-term, immediate knee-jerk resistance to the call to adventure, I suppose any of those could be valid reads. I'm going to turn over my cards right now. Here's what I see going on. Esther is not a Mary Sue. She's not a perfect character who's perfect from the beginning, and she's right in all of her judgments from the beginning, and she doesn't need to grow, and she has all the skills and all the powers. She isn't that kind of character. She's a well-written, strong female character, meaning she's an actual human with actual fear and relatability and courage sometimes and not courage other times. Well, this is the low point for her in terms of her courage arc in the story, in my opinion. I think she's just straight up balking at it. And I do think that she is finding reassurance in the fact that, well, I obviously want this to get solved, and I'm really hoping somebody else does, because this would be horrible. But, I mean, either way, I think I'm going to get through this one, because this isn't really an immediate threat to me, but it becomes an immediate threat to me if I say anything, because it draws attention to myself. And naturally, somebody who hears me defending the Jews is going to be like, wait a minute, that sounds like the kind of thing a secret Jew would say. So straight up, I do think she's resisting the call to adventure. I do think she is interested in saving her own skin, but that is not mutually exclusive with her wanting to see the Jewish people delivered. It's just clearly she thinks somebody else is better positioned to do it. That takes us to the second part of the resistance to this call to adventure, this call to heroism. She gives a handful of reasons for why you can't. Big reason number one is, just everybody knows, you cannot go into the king's presence for free. Well, this comes right back to that idea that the most valuable commodity in the Persian Empire is access to the King of Kings. And if the King of Kings just starts giving that away for nothing, he's smart. He knows he will destroy that economy that currently he's the only one who can print currency for. So he's got to be smart with that. But that's not the only reason Xerxes makes it so that you don't get to come into his presence without permission, without being summoned. There's also the issue of what happened earlier with Darius. Remember the whole deal where one of the 7 co-conspirators was like, I don't care about these stupid rules about approaching the king. Let me in there right now. And the door guards are like, no. And then they get into fisticuffs. And then Darius is like, whoa, hey, we got rules for a reason. You can't do that. And he goes mega nuclear on the guy and punishes him harshly. And in doing so, he really doubles down on this policy that only the people in this elite group get access, but even they only get access at certain times and under certain conditions, and never under other conditions. So the original audience would have known that Esther has a point here. You really don't mess with this policy. The king is motivated on multiple levels to make sure that he enforces this policy, even with his wife or one of his wives. The second thing she brings up is that now's just not a good time. It's been a long time since I've been invited. 30 days have gone by. Now, look, this is a family podcast. Try to keep it workable for everybody, but also we're all honest thinkers with each other here. And that number, 30 days, that kind of stands out to me. I mean, what is Esther supposed to do? What is all of the king's wives supposed to do? They're supposed to bear him children and heirs, not just heirs to the throne, but heirs who can govern and keep all of the governance of all of the provinces, all of the satrapies in the family. 30 days have passed here, and Esther has got to be thinking, there's sort of a rhythm to when I get called in and when I don't get called in. And maybe right now the king's attention is going toward producing heirs or future governors with another wife. So she's got a sense of when that access is going to happen and when it's going to be a while before that access happens. And she is trying to communicate to Mordecai that for whatever reason, I've thrown out one possibility. It's probably going to be a while, and I don't know if I can help you with this. Now, at the same time, it could be interpreted as, again, being a little bit excusey and self-protecting to throw out this detail because, well, 30 days have passed. Well, all right, but we got like 11 months on this whole deal. Is he not going to talk to you for a year? Has he gone a year in the past without talking to you? So I think it's a fair read on this low water moment in terms of the development of Esther's courage character. to say maybe she's being a little bit excusey here. Also, I don't want to get after her too hard because, again, the penalty for getting this wrong and misplaying it socially is death. And we know that this king will make an example even of his wives, maybe especially of his wives, if they defy him. Vashti, even though justified, defied him earlier, and he did what he did. Now he's kind of painted into his own corner. He's going to have to do at least what he did to Vashti, maybe even more to Esther, if word gets out that she violated protocol with him as well. Again, no judgment. This is a terribly difficult situation she's in, and Esther only comes off as a stronger, more relatable character who's being guided by the hands of God and his providence because she balks and demonstrates a weakness that probably any of us would as well. This is not a bug of her character journey. This is a feature, and it's going to make seeing her muster courage and overcome this weakness all that more compelling as we move along. Don't forget that we're having a party on September 25th and then a little miniature pastors church ministry conference on September 26th here at my place in Rapid City, South Dakota. We'll keep you updated on details as they come together. It'll probably be a couple more weeks before we have a fresh set of details, but I see a bunch of you have signed up to stay at Hotel Alex Johnson. That's going to be fun. I'm staying there as well. I will see you there. And a lot of you have signed up. I mean, this is going to be a really fun event, but not so many. It doesn't seem like it'll be overwhelming. I think it's tracking toward being just exactly right. So if you're still on the fence, my vote would be come hang out with me. It'd be great to meet you. Come to the thing. We'll have a party. It'd be great. There'll be hot dogs and a balloon and Jeff Foote. It'll be super. All right, now that's actually all I got. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.